Okay, in this unit, I want to talk about justice. Or rather, a couple very specific things about justice, because justice is a huge topic and there's a lot to say on it, and we can mean a lot of things by it. You know, some ways of classing this, even the stuff we've talked about, war might be under the topic of justice, right? What is justice in war? What does a just war look like? The language is not out of place there, right? And in society generally, when we're not talking about war, we might mean a lot of things by this term. But I want to focus on two specific things. And these are both big topics. They're so big, I won't be able to say too much about either of them, but I think we should at least look at them in light of the moral theories we've looked at. Both, again, to get a better idea how the moral theories work, but also, I think, because these are important topics. And the first of these is criminal justice. You know, this issue of punishing people who have broken the law. And there's two big issues here I want to talk about, two questions I'm going to focus on and keep coming back to. And the first of these just is why punish criminals? Or there's different ways you might put this question. What's the point of punishing criminals? Or if you want to put it even more pointedly, how in the world does the government claim a right to do this? How can you justify punishing criminals, right? I mean, look, even if somebody does something terrible to you, you can't just lock them in your basement, even for like a day, right? You couldn't just, even if they have done something legitimately terrible to you, you know, they push you downstairs and you break several bones, you get out and then you lock them in your basement for a day. You couldn't do that, right? And yet the government claims a right to do this to all of us if we break the law. Some states will even, very rarely used, even in states that have it, but some states will even execute people. How in the world can that be justified, right? That is a big question. And it's one that I think we don't think enough about, right? We just kind of seem to assume, accept the fact that, well, we're going to send people to jail if they do certain stuff, prison. It's like, well, that's pretty remarkable when you think about it. What justifies that? And secondly, how do we set punishments? Or maybe how should we set punishments, right? You know, some of the things politicians might do to set punishments might just be because they're good slogans, they win an election, you know. But ideally, if we did this rationally, if we did this in a justifiable way, how do we set punishments, right? And we have a general idea here, less serious offenses deserve lighter punishments. Whatever else you say, shoplifters shouldn't go to jail for as long as murderers, and people who beat other people up for no good reason, well, they should go to jail longer than shoplifters, but not as long as murderers, right? So we have this general sense punishment should fit the crime, but why? And what does that mean? And now the question of distributive justice. And this is probably a term you're like, distributive what? You've probably never heard anybody use this term before. But it is a concept that should be familiar to you because a lot of our debates are about distributive justice. It's a fancy way of saying who should get what in society. Money and all the other good things, what is a fair or just way to distribute them? And even though you probably don't use this term, and you're not going to hear a politician on the stumps talking about distributive justice, you know, even though I think you should be able to recognize a lot of our debates as being very much, very recognizably about distributive justice, right? You know, when we talk about whether to cut taxes on the wealthiest people or raise them, keep them the same, that is a debate about distributive justice. When we debate about whether there should be a child tax credit, and if so, who should get it, that is a debate about distributive justice, right? You know, how much support should state governments and the federal government give to public colleges and universities? Should community college be free? Should other colleges be free? All of these are debates about distributive justice. Constant debate about, well, do we raise Social Security? By how much? All of these are about distributive justice. And it's such a big topic. Both of these are big topics. We're only going to be able to kind of dip our feet in a little bit, right? But I think it's good to at least take a pass at these and see, well, okay, what might these moral theories say about both? We will start in the next lecture with utilitarianism and criminal justice, and then we will move on to Kantianism and criminal justice, and then we'll start looking at this question of distributive justice.